Welcome back to TypeSpec 101. I'm Mario Guerra, the TypeSpec product manager at Microsoft. In today's video, we're covering a crucial aspect of building secure REST APIs, adding authentication. We'll be using a special decorator named useAuth to enforce authentication on specific operations, and I'll walk you through an example using bearer authentication. If you'd like to follow along with the tutorial sessions, you can download the session files from aka.ms/typespec101/files. This will give you access to the end result of changes made to main TSP for each video. You can easily cut and paste from these files to follow along and implement the changes as we go through the tutorials. Authentication ensures that only authorized clients can access or modify your resources. You don't want just any random Yahoo modifying your backend data store, do you? Of course not. In TypeSpec, we use the useAuth decorator to enforce authentication on the operations it decorates. This decorator allows us to specify an authentication mechanism to use, like bearer authentication, which uses tokens for access control. Bearer authentication, also known as token authentication, is an HTTP authentication scheme that involves security tokens called bearer tokens. The name bearer authentication can be understood to mean give access to the bearer of this token. I'm telling you all this because we will be using bearer authentication in our example, but you can use whatever authentication scheme best suits your needs. The TypeSpec HTTP library includes definitions for several common authentication schemes, including bearer auth. This makes it easy to integrate secure authentication mechanisms into your API. Check out the documentation for more details on the available authentication schemes. Let's jump into some code to see how this works. Once again, we're working with our Pet Store API. We don't need authentication everywhere, just on the operations that modify the backend pets data. So we'll add the useAuth decorator to the create pet, update pet, and delete pet operations to enforce bearer authentication on those operations. We'll also add a new error model to cover unauthorized access errors. As you can see, we've added the useAuth decorator with a bearer auth parameter to the create pet, update pet, and delete pet operations. This ensures that these operations require bearer authentication. We've also defined a new error model, unauthorized error, to handle unauthorized access errors, and we've added it as a possible response for these operations. Now let's take a look at how these changes affect the generated OpenAPI specification. Here's the spec for the delete pet operation. Notice the security section specifies that bearer authentication is required. The components section includes a security schemes definition for bearer auth, indicating that it uses the HTTP bearer authentication scheme. I want to clarify that your backend service code will need to handle the actual authentication logic, but TypeSpec helps you specify the authentication requirements in your API definition in a consistent and structured way. In this video, we focused on adding authentication to your REST API using TypeSpec. By applying the useAuth decorator to specify an authentication scheme, we can enforce authentication on specific operations, ensuring that only authorized clients can perform certain actions. In the next video, we'll get into versioning your REST API. Versioning allows you to introduce new features and improvements while maintaining backward compatibility for existing clients. Stay tuned.